Hi, this is Marek from Tryb Solo. Today I have a small game called Dawn. It's a game published by Grean Meadow Games, and thanks Grean Meadow Games for sending this game for review. This is not a solo game, so sorry. Sometimes I play multiplayer games as well. I really like the artwork of this game when I have seen it on the Kickstarter page, because this is a crowdfunded game. But when I read about the game and how the game plays, it was so interesting and I was intrigued that I wanted to review it and to try it. This is a game where you play as a villager who's trying, the villagers are trying to build a village, different buildings. So they will use resource cards during the game. The game lasts 6 rounds to build and construct different buildings that will give them victory points at the end of the game. But during the game, each player can decide to not be the ally, the good guy, but to be a scoundrel. And the goal of a scoundrel is to not construct buildings, but to collect and gather as many treasure as possible during the 6th round of the game. So scoundrels, they want to collect treasure, and allies want to construct buildings. You can decide if you want to be a scoundrel or ally during the game, at the start of the game, it's up to you. Each round you will add 1 card to your storage, and then at the end of the game you count the treasure in your storage, and this dictates if you are a scoundrel or not. So this is very interesting because this is like a social deduction, hidden identity game, but the game doesn't force you to be the good guy or the bad guy, but you can decide during the game if you want to build this village or if you want to get treasure. It's really interesting. And now I will show you how the game plays, more or less, and then I will tell you what I think about it. This is Dawn prepared for a 3-player game. The setup for a 3, 4 or 5-player game is more or less the same. The only difference is in the number of the small cards that are displayed on the table. The 2-player variant is a little different, and I will talk about it a little later. Here we have a big deck of cards. These are resource cards. You have 4 types of resources: red, green, blue and yellow. Each player at the start of each round, there are 6 rounds in the game, each player at the start of the round will get 7 resource cards and 2 wound cards. At the start of the game you get 2 wounds and 7 resources. During the game the proportion can be different, because at the start of each round you will have 9 cards in your hand. The more wounds you have in your hand, the less resources you will get, because wounds are cards that you normally cannot discard. There is one way to discard the wounds, but normally if you have 5 wounds at the start of the round, you will only draw 4 resources, so you have 9 cards in total. So here are the resources and what you can do with the resources. The main goal of this game is to build a village. At least if you are the good player, the ally. Because in this game you can be either an ally and you will try to construct different buildings and score a specific number of victory points at the end of the game, or you can be a scoundrel, and as a scoundrel your goal is to sabotage building the buildings. You shouldn't allow allies to build buildings, and your goal is to score as many treasures as you can during the game, because each of the resource cards has a number of treasures here. Like this one has 2 treasures, this one has -2, this one has 1. At the start of each round, each player will choose one of the cards, the resource cards, not the wound cards, and will put one of the cards in the storage area here. So because you have 6 rounds, at the end of the game you will have 6 cards here. If you want to be a scoundrel, it's good for you to store cards with as many treasures as you can, because at the end of the game each scoundrel will calculate the total number of treasures, and the scoundrel with most treasures will win in a situation when allies don't construct the necessary number of buildings. So if you are a scoundrel, your goal is to store as many treasures as you can. You have always 4 major buildings that you will try to construct Each of these buildings will give you victory points at the end of the game, sometimes a specific number like 20 or 30. This one will give you 4 victory points per built building, so the more buildings you build, the more points you will get. This one will give you 10 victory points per ally without wounds. So if you want to construct this building and score this building, the allies should try not to have wounds in their hands. And here is the cost of the building. To build this building at the end of the game, you must have at least 8 yellow cards added to this building during the game. Here you need cards with at least 18 treasure. Here you need cards 10 blue cards and 7 green cards. And these buildings are here during the whole game, so each player can see what is the building requirement, and players will contribute and add cards to this building during the game. And at the end of the game you will check which cards were added, and you will check if the building was constructed or not. There's also this middle row here, and here you have different cards. You have either small buildings, they always have the treasure requirement at the top right corner, or you have threat cards. The threat cards have this icon at the bottom, and if you want to discard a threat card, players need to add 4 green cards to discard during the round in order to get rid of it. In order to build a small building, players need to add cards with at least 11 treasure. For example, here you need 6 treasure, 8 treasure, or you need, for example, 5 blue cards. The small cards here will be discarded each round. If the threats were defeated, they will be just discarded. If you don't manage to defeat a threat, it will be revealed and something bad can happen. Here all players get a wound. For example, here nothing happens. So this is kind of random. You have more of these cards here. As I said, they will be discarded each round and new cards will be drawn and put here. Each round of the game starts with players. They need to have 9 cards in their hands. So if they have some wounds from the previous round, they draw as many cards, so they have 9 in total. At the start of each round, each player must decide which card he or she wants to put in the storage. As I said, if you are a scoundrel, your goal is to have as many treasure as you can. If you are an ally, you shouldn't have treasures here, because at the end of the game, each player will show how many treasures he or she has gathered. If you have 7 or more, it means you are a scoundrel. If you have less than 7, it means you are an ally. So allies shouldn't put cards with treasures here, so they don't become a scoundrel. So you decide to put 1 card here. Let's say I will put this card here. And all the remaining cards in my hand, I have to decide where I will place these cards. I can place them, I can add them to any of the great buildings to contribute, to build, to construct them at the end of the game, or I can decide and add my cards to the small cards here. Each time you decide to add a card somewhere, you put it face down so other players don't see it. So no one during the game will be sure if you are an ally or a scoundrel. You can talk with other players, you can convince them, you can say what are you planning to do, but what you are really doing, it's up to you, because no one will see your card. So let's say I will put this card here. Here is a threat that needs blue cards. All players must put 4 in total. So for example, I will put the 2 blue cards here. I will put 1, for example, gold card. It has 3 treasures here because I want to construct, for example, this building. And I have this card. I can put, I don't know, 1 here. Or I, for example, will take this one from the storage and put this one here. The cards in the storage can always be replaced with other cards in your hand. You cannot put wound cards here, but you can always, during each round, replace cards from your storage and put other cards here. You just have to remember that you need to have exact number, so each round you add 1. So if you take one card from the storage, you have to put another card here. And let's say I decide to put the green card here. And this is the end of my round. Now it's the round of the second player. At the start of the game, each round, let's say he put this card here, and now he's got this card, and he or she decides which card to put where. So each player adds cards to different buildings and different threats. When all players have passed, then you check which cards were added, and either you manage to defeat a threat or not. If you manage to build a building, for example, you will add this building near the great buildings, but you don't reveal it, because each small building has got a number of victory points on the back, but you cannot see it during the game. You will reveal it at the end of the game. All the cards that were added to the great building stay here, and all the cards will be revealed at the end of the game after 6 rounds. There is also other way to spend your cards from your hand, the resource cards, because you can either add them to different buildings or threat, or you can just spend them to do different actions. If, for example, you decide to discard a red card, you can look at 2 cards, random cards that were added to one of the great buildings. You can look at 2, and you can remove 1 and put 1 back. Of course, before you take 2 random cards from here, you have to shuffle them, so you don't know which player added which cards. So red cards allow you to look at cards in the great buildings and look at 2 and discard 1. If you discard a blue card, a spy card, you can look at the other side of each of the one of the small cards here. So for example, if you would like to check what happens if you don't defeat this threat, you can discard 1 blue card and you can check, okay, all players get a wound. But if you, for example, if you checked this card, you would know that nothing happens and you don't really have to add cards here, because even if you don't defeat this threat, nothing will happen. So discarding a blue card allows you to look at the back side of one of the small cards. But of course, you do it secretly, you don't show other players. You can tell other players what will happen, but you can lie, you don't have to tell the truth. It's your information. And you can also discard 3 green cards if you have, to remove 1 wound card from either your hand or from the hand of other player. So green cards are used for healing if you have 3 of them, or for example if you have 3 and a yellow one, because yellow one is a wild card and it can be used in place of any other card. You could discard these 3 cards and then you will remove this wound card from your hand, so you'll have less wounds in the following round. And this is how the game continues. After 6 rounds, all players check which buildings they managed to build from the small buildings. They check the victory point value on the back of these cards. They check if they managed to construct the great buildings, and they count the number of victory points. You need 30 victory points per ally. So if at the end of the game it turned out that two players are allies, they need in total 60 victory points. If they manage to get 60 points, they together win the game and all the scoundrels lose. If the ally players don't manage to score as many victory points as they have to, then all the scoundrels will calculate how many treasures they gathered during the game in their storage area, and the scoundrel with most treasure will win the game. And if you play a 2-player game, it works more or less similar. The difference is that instead of 5 small cards, you put 7 cards each round, and at the start of the whole game you add 5 random cards from the deck to each great building, and at the start of each round you add 3 random cards from this deck to each small card here. This is because otherwise, if there are 2 players and only these 2 players will add cards to buildings, it will be easy to guess who is an ally and who is a scoundrel, And because you, at the start of the game and at the start of each round, you add random cards to each building and each threat, it's hard to tell if, for example, a bad card that is here was put by the other player or it was randomly drawn from this deck. And this is how you play Dawn. I really like Dawn. This review will be quite fast. It's a small card game, you know, the gameplay takes like 30 minutes. It's from 2 to 5 players, so I'll not talk a lot about pros and cons. It's a fun game, very interesting gameplay. It looks beautiful, even though it's a small game and you have just cards. The artwork on the cards is great. It looks like I know, like old medieval books. It's really nice. The main con is, but it doesn't work solo, but this is obvious. It's like a, you know, hidden identity game. It's hard to make the game solo. But the main con for me is that it doesn't really, in my opinion, works well with 2 players. It's from 2 players, the box says so, and there's a special 2-player variant in the game. But in a 2-player game, apart from players contributing to buildings, you always add some random cards from the deck, and the randomness makes it sometimes hard to construct the buildings, and in a 2-player game it's easier to be the scoundrel than to be an ally, because you never know which random cards will be added to each card at the table. But in a 3, 4 and 5-player games, when only players add cards to buildings and to threats, it's really interesting. You never know who is who, you don't trust any players, and like with all, I know, social deduction, hidden identity games, it's more fun the more players are playing it. So it's from 2 to 5. I would recommend a 4 or 5-player game. It will be really, really fun. It's small, it's compact, it's easy to take this game with you to a pub, to a party, to I don't know, to holidays. It's really well made. The box is sturdy. You have thick cards. You have like a drawer. It's really well made. This is, I think, the deluxe edition. There's always also a regular edition. I'm not 100% sure when and if the game is available. It was crowdfunded on Kickstarter, but I know that the publisher, it took some time to fulfill this game. But now it was sent to all the backers, and I think that it should be available somewhere. So if you like this type of games, and if you want to play it with 3, 4, 5 people, this is a really cool, small, hidden identity game. That's it. I had fun playing it, and it will stay in my collection. And if I will go to some party or to a board game pub with more people, I will take it with me, because it's, you know, small and compact. Click the like button if you like the video. Subscribe to my channel if you would like to. Visit me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I will leave links in the description of the video. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.